Hi everyone and welcome to another video. Long time no see, I know. And my battery is already crashing. This is gonna be great. Yes, it took me a while to film this video. I've been away on holiday to Brazil for a couple of weeks, and as it turns out, the time before that and even the time afterwards, the whole holiday just took up a lot of space in my brain. So the idea of even watching YouTube videos was a little bit too much, let alone filming it. But I wanted to share how my holiday was and the books that I read and everything. Also because I know some of you were interested. I had planned to vlog while I was there, but to no one's surprise but on my own, filming while on holiday, not really my thing. Now I did shoot some clips, but cannot really be used for a vlog, but I did want to still, for those of you who are interested, if you're not interested, click the thingy and just go to the part where I talk about books. But I just wanted to share how my holiday was. Now, I could just show you videos and talk and stuff, but as I'm a bookish channel and I made a photo album, I thought I would use this to, I don't know, show you some of the stuff that we've done. I'm gonna try to focus on the highlights. So this is the photo album that I made. I spent 4 days just making this photo album. It was lots of fun, and we start out with this little map that you can see of how the trip went. So let me zoom it in a little bit for you, and I'll just be here. So we arrived in Rio from Amsterdam. It was about a 12-hour flight. We stayed there a couple of days. 2-hour flight to Curitiba, where the wedding was, because we went on holiday because the brother of my partner was getting married and his wife is Brazilian, so Curitiba, this was 2 hours. Stayed there a couple of days. This was another 2-hour flight to Campo Grande because we wanted to go to the Pantanal. That was this region. This was another 5-hour drive, and then between Campo Grande we went back to Sao Paulo and then back to the Netherlands. This again was a 2-hour flight, and then back to the Netherlands was 12 hours again. So that's just to give you an idea of kind of what our trip was like. We were there for 2.5 weeks at the end of November, and the weather there was really nice. I got sunburned quite a few times. So in Rio, we didn't go to Jesus on his rock, partly because Paula said that it wasn't that much fun. So we visited the city a little bit. We went to the old city center, but by far the best adventure that we had is actually the place where we were able to take this picture was a hike. I think we hiked for about 3 hours, in part to get to this great rock where we had a great overview of the bay. We did some climbing, we did some upseiling, whatever that's called. It was just great, and the view was wonderful. In general, there was a lot of sun, and the skies were completely blue in Rio, which was great. We had a hotel at the Copacabana, so I could, the Zoom is being great, isn't it, today? Yes. So I could go for a run on the Copacabana, which was amazing. That's pretty much it for Rio highlights. So then we went to Curitiba. It's a big city, so this is one of those cities that I've never heard of, but it's twice as big as Amsterdam. It was huge. We walked a little bit through it. We enjoyed all of the scene, some of the painted things. There were some animals as well. We went to a park and we saw a capybara. And this is a quero-quero. We got attacked by quero-quero. So I'd heard something in the bushes. So I thought, I'm just gonna go there. And there was a quero-quero. And I thought, whatever. And then the quero-quero started attacking me, and I realized quero-quero does not want me to be here. So I started retreating, but he flew past again. But if I had not ducked, I'm not sure that the quero-quero would still have not hit me. That's something that I will never know. But in general, we were just enjoying Curitiba just for the day that we were there. The weather when we were in Curitiba was weird because the prediction was that it was going to rain the whole day. So we had actually planned to go to the Oscar Niemeyer Museum, which is great. I'm going to talk about it more in a second, but if you're ever in Curitiba, go to the Oscar Niemeyer Museum. So we planned to go there when it was raining, and for the rest of the day we were just hoping that it would be fine. We ended up getting so sunburned because it only started raining at the end of the day. That was sad, that was sad. So Oscar Niemeyer It was a great museum. It's one of the largest in the South America, and one of the things, they had different expositions, and there were 4, I think, that I fell totally in love with. But the one that was best of all is one where they had some of these benches, and those benches are made by different tribes in the Amazon rainforest. And so you had a film that showed you how the benches were made, and they had like kind of grouped the benches by animals, because as you can see, they're quite decorated. They get painted either red or black. So they had this whole room with all of these benches, and if you can see there, was all about information about all the different tribes, and kind of seeing, not only was seeing that, hey, if you're a tribe living in the Amazon rainforest, that doesn't mean that the only thing that you're doing day in, day out is surviving. You also make time to make art. That was kind of something that I hadn't really thought about ever before. And also seeing all of the names of the tribes and the amount of people that are part of the tribes, where they live, the languages that they speak, and a little bit of history, kind of made me realize also how many groups there still are. So that was great. Anyway, Curitiba, just one day over there, and then we went to Guaratuba, which is a small village near the sea, at the sea. So I stood up, I realized, quick story, Guaratuba is a 2-hour drive from Curitiba, so it wasn't that far away, at least for Brazilian perspectives of time and space, which is very different from the Dutch perspective. But I realized that in Europe, usually you see the sun setting in the sea. But in Brazil, because I was on the other side of the ocean, I could, if I woke up early enough, see the sun rising from the sea. So I set my alarm clock and went running at 5:30 in the morning. The sun was already up, so he was already, I think when I started out he was over here, and then when I finished he was over there. It was still a wonderful experience, but that was fun. So obviously we were there for a wedding. So this is us being fancy, and some family, the bride and groom being very pretty. This was the idea of the wedding, you know, at the beach and everything, but the weather wasn't great, so the whole ceremony was inside the hotel. But still wonderful, still family. It was very much on one side of the room there were all the Brazilians, and the other side all the Dutch, but I'd been learning Portuguese, so I could sometimes go chat with some people. I actually talked to the parents of the bride a couple of times, which was really nice. Anyway, we were expecting nice weather, so then we went to this idyllic island called the Ilha do Mel, which stands for the Honey Island. Unfortunately, this was the weather that we had. This, if you can see, this is all water. All the roads had turned in these mini rivers. This was just the last day when we left. It was so great. That whole island, you can't go there by car. You have to either walk or cycle, which obviously we did. We cycled on the beach, which was a lot of fun. And there was so much nature. There was also these, I don't like those. I really, really don't like those. But it was a really nice, I just love to go back there. I just love to go back there. In general, we really enjoyed watching all the nature and birds that are different than what we have here. Even the grass is different. I mean, when we were in Rio, we were crossing the road, we even stopped to just like look at this tree that was just different, and it had these things hanging. Wait, I have a picture of that. And we're like, what is this? It was apparently a completely normal tree, but for us it wasn't. We don't have trees like this here in Europe. So just that, there was also all of this beauty. Now, after the Ilha do Mel, we went to the Pantanal for 4 days, and that was easily the best part of the trip. The Pantanal is a kind of nature park reserve thing. It's huge, huge. I'll put the square kilometers, the surface area down below, but it's about 5 times the Netherlands, for those of you who know what that means. Huge, and so many flora and fauna. Apparently it's also easier to see some animals there than in the Amazon rainforest, which most tourists tend to think about, me included, when they go to Brazil. Only on the way over already did we see like this deer just popping out of the road, and we saw so many birds. So many birds, like 2 blue macaws. Apparently it was breeding season, so a lot of the animals were together, like in pairs. So two toucans flying through the skies, and then macaws flying, but just parallel to one another. These big blue birds. So many birds. These were just at the farm where we stayed for a couple of days. And so much noise. Not only the birds made a lot of noise, but also the insects. They just... And for the rest, there was no road nearby. It was just us and nature and the people that were taking care of us, which was all these birds. Wonderful. So we did a couple of activities while we were there. We went fishing with piranha. We went piranha fishing. So this is me fishing a piranha. This is me catching a piranha. This is my partner catching a piranha. And here you see the friend that was nearby us. He's over there. So that's a caiman. While we were fishing, the caiman was just next to us, just waiting to get fish. I learned while I was on holiday that my perception of danger is not exactly how it should be. My partner was keeping distance. I was like, oh, hello. How close can I get? So we went horseback riding. And this is kind of what the region in general would look like where we were. It's a lot of flat areas that can get completely flooded. They have dry season and a flooded season, but they haven't had floods for the past 4 years. We went on a little boat trip on the river, also trying to spot animals. So we saw these monkeys, howler monkeys. The goal mostly on all of these activities was to try and see a jaguar, because that's the main thing. And we did. We saw in the distance while we were riding to go on the boat trip. We saw a jaguar in the distance, which was pretty cool. But we also, at one point, we went for walks, and then we just saw these footprints, and then started following it. There were snakes. Don't like snakes. Don't like snakes. Sea blue macaws. This was a dead caiman that was just drying up. Baby lamb that was born. This is the place that I was reading, and between the activities we would just hang in the hang mats, and it was wonderful, wonderful, wonderful area. It was just the best. It was really the Pantanal part. When we were leaving, first of all, I realized that, oh wow, I really loved all the nature and stuff, but there was also this part where we were in the plane going back that I realized not only am I leaving all the nature and stuff and the holiday, but I'm going to have to go back to responsibilities, not just like work stuff, but also I'm going to have to think about the house. I'm going to have to plan meals, cook. We had to do nothing while we were in the Pantanal. The only thing that we had to think about ourselves was drink enough, put on sunscreen, and put on bug repellent. That was it. Not that the bug repellent helped, by the way, or at least there weren't that many bugs. I had 50 mosquito bites. I kid you not. I kid you not. Anyway, after the Pantanal, we went via Sao Paulo to back home, and that was it. And since then, I've been back in rainy the Netherlands. We went from 30 degrees, sleeping with air conditioning, which is not something I've ever done, to a couple of days later here in the Netherlands, people skating on ice and us wearing all the clothes again. So yeah, that was the holiday. Now, while I was on holiday, obviously I also read, but I didn't read half as much as I thought I was. I reserved a lot of books from the library to put on my e-reader, and I was also listening to some audiobooks. On audio, I've been listening to Harry Potter, which has been a nice experience, but I'll talk to that more in another video, I think. And the books that I took with me when I was there were all Dutch books, because those were the ones that I could get from the library. So what I read, first off, I finished Mijn Lieve, Gunsteling by Marieke Lucas Reineveld. So this is the writer of, what is it called in English? The Discomfort of Evening, that won the International Booker 3 years ago. And this is their second book. I thought this is a kind of a Lolita retelling. So it's written from the point of view of a man who's 49 years old, and he works as a veterinarian in farms here in the Dutch polders, and he kind of falls in love, are his word, with a girl who's 14 years old, and this is about their relationship. And in the beginning, it's written so beautifully. So there's this huge contrast between the beauty and the lightness of the writing, and on the other hand, the awful things that he's actually saying, and he's actually doing, and he's actually describing. That is very weird, and that's also what kind of kept me on the tip of my like tense all the time. Like you're kind of lulled in this fairy thing, and then on the same time like wait, but this is awful, this is so bad. And at the beginning of the book, you kind of don't really know, we don't get the story from her point of view. So in the beginning, from what he says, you kind of get the impression that it's a shared thing, and then as the book progresses, things start to get muddled and muddled and muddled even more. I really like this. I think a lot of people will not, because obviously it's a horrible topic. And there's also, just like with the Discovered of Evening, there's these really creepy, just like disgusting things that are happening also. I mean, he kind of describes how he takes away the penis of a skunk and what he does with that. No, of an otter, I think. There's discussing stuff like that, but I was fascinated, and I'm going to continue every novel that this author brings out because I'm just fascinated by it. I also read this one. This is Pauperparadijs by Suzanne Jansen. This one, by the way, to my knowledge, has not been has not been translated, and this one hasn't either. So this is non-fiction, and it's about the family of the author, basically, and for the past 5 generations, and part of her family has they were poor. And 5 generations ago, the Netherlands was a very different place, and the way that poor people were looked at was also very, very different. And her family kind of got included in this whole experiment that was happening in the east of the country, where this rich dude had basically decided, oh, poor people, well, if I just teach them how to work, then they'll get better and I'll solve poverty. So he made these places, and he would just ask poor people to come, and then he would fix it. Obviously that wasn't really what ended up happening, because poor people aren't just poor by choice. There weren't a lot of people who were poor who were actually able to work. So that was an issue that he had. There were also not a lot of people that were willing to leave their family just to go to this very different place. So it's kind of about how poor people were viewed through all these different generations, and what having been at those farm kind of places, what it did to how people then perceived them. So if you had been to these places in Veenhuizen, then you would never be seen as a normal human being. You would be seen as someone who was very lazy, probably violent, alcoholic, etc., etc. So it's also about the impact that has on her family throughout the generations. I wasn't interested in the history of her family, to be honest. So it was interesting, but not as interesting as I thought it was going to be. But it was, what I liked seeing at one point is when how the view of the government started changing. At the beginning, poor people were kind of the only people that looked at them and tried to help them was the church, and the government did not really see it as their responsibility to make sure that poor people had a better life and could possibly learn things. And how come people are poor, blah, blah, blah. That was not a question that was asked. And throughout the 200 years that we read in this book, that starts to change, and you see what the influences are of the government's actions, and how houses also were designed differently. One of the things that kind of struck me is that they realized that a lot of people were living outside, and that one way to get them inside was to make inside life more interesting. So why would a man stay inside the house if his house is filthy? Why would he not go drinking if his house is a bad place to be? Why would mothers not kick out their children because they're just making a lot of ruckus inside? Why would they not just let them rummage on the streets? So they kind of started designing houses differently so that people would be more tempted to stay indoors, which I found very, very interesting. So those are the two books that I finished. I also bought this one. This is Rumores da Cidade by Lucas Rocha. It's in Portuguese. I'd been learning Portuguese, as I said, a little bit earlier, and one of the goals that I had was to be able to buy a book and read it. So I got this. I think this is middle grade, maybe young adult. Now I'm French, so Portuguese and French kind of resemble one another. So I think that when I read, I'm going to be able to understand, I hope enough. I'm really curious. This is about a young boy in a small town, and he is gay, but because his father is a minister, what is his father? Is his father a minister, or does he work for the local government? I think he's local government, but because of that, this boy, Andre, cannot come out to his friends, to his family, etc. But then stuff starts happening in the town, and he starts talking to his uncle, who's also kind of living a different lifestyle, and maybe coming out and being honest about his feelings, and being honest about his feelings to Diego, his crush at school, might be a solution. So I'm curious to see this. I'm curious also because one of the things that I saw also in Brazil is that, I mean, I knew, but then I saw that the relationship to religion is very different from what I'm used to in Western Europe. So I think this is going to also show a little bit of that, which I'm looking forward to. But, so this is kind of my conundrum. I've now shifted to reading plans for the rest of the year. We're now halfway through December. Now we're last week of December even. And I had selected a couple of books that I wanted to read, one being Herkunft by Sasa Stanisic. This is German, and I plan on reading one German book every year. I started this one in October, but partly because of the language and partly because of the holiday stuff going on in my head, I just couldn't. It hasn't grasped me yet, and I'm thinking of just letting it be for a couple of months and switching to reading this one instead in this last week. Reading this one, then my rule would not be reading a German book a year, but reading one of the languages that I do not speak very well a year. And that would also allow me to read a book from a Brazilian author, which is also a Country for Invisible Cities, the project that I'm participating in. I have another book by a Brazilian author. It arrived just 1 week ago, I think. So this is We Used to Love the Cowboys by Carlos Ben-Sinomon. I have it in French. I was planning on reading this one, but switching to this one might just make my life a little bit easier. But then my last book of the year would be a Portuguese middle grade / young adult book. But they're having bikes, so that might completely be okay. That might completely be okay. On holiday, I also, by the way, started reading The Open Veins of Latin America, which was another book that I had planned on reading in this period, but it's very dense. I have read 36 pages. I only read those pages while I was on the plane on the way over, and then I just switched to the stuff that was on my e-reader because it was really not working. I still think the first 30 pages alone were fascinating. Also, okay, I'm starting to ramble, but what I like to do when I'm reading a book about a region that I don't know is draw a map. So I had drawn this map of South America, Latin America. And then I started reading. First page, title page. Second page, a map. I had honestly checked, but these pages are so small that I hadn't come across the map. So now, and they have 3 maps for throughout the ages, so now I have 4 maps of Latin America in my book, but still fine. The other book that I'm still reading, this is my pick for Angola for Invisible Cities. This is Het Genootschap van Onvrijwillige Dromers by Jose Eduardo Galeano. So this is translated from the Portuguese, so I kind of read it in the original, maybe, to the Dutch. Would have wanted to read this one in French because Portuguese and French are closer to one another, and I haven't always been satisfied with translations to Dutch, but it's not printed anymore in French, so I got this one from the library. So wait, the original title is, does it say here? A Sociedade dos Sonados Involuntarios, and in English that would be the Society of Involuntary Dreamers. The Society of Involuntary Dreamers. I am nearly at the end, but I'll talk about this one in another video because I've been rambling a lot. So in this video, if you're still here, thanks for watching, because you've seen me ramble about my holidays and you've seen me ramble about the books, which is always good. I'll see you in another video, whatever that will be. I have lots of plans, but as always, the end of the year, I have my plans for the first quarter of 2003. I have my best books, even though I still am reading, so I can't film that one yet, because one of these books might still make it to my favorite books of the year list. I have my stats video that I want to do. I have lots of reading around the world books that I've read recently, so I think I could do 2 videos about those. So I have some planning to do, and the light has been crap. I'm sitting on the ground in front of the biggest window that I have just in order to film this video. I haven't been able to do that for the last week because of the crappy light. I said I was going to stop rambling. It was nice to see you again, and I'll chat to you in the comments. Bye.
Ba-chum, ba-chum, chum.